In high school, I remember that every year we would read some classic books, whether it be from Shakespeare. I remembered it was Julius Caesar and Romeo and Juliet, or some kind of classic novels, for instance, The Grapes of Wrath, The Catcher in the Rye. And one that I liked very much was A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Love the way it began, probably one of the most famous beginnings of a book. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And it chronicled two cities, Paris and London, right around the time before the French Revolution and what was going on there. It's a historical novel, so there's certainly a good setting of what we know happened from the, again, historical perspective, but also we're brought into that time period through the lives of people, because really it's people who live history. And when we see it through the eyes of the human person, we get to experience history in a whole different way. So A Tale of Two Cities brings us today on the Feast of the Epiphany to a tale not of two cities, but of three cities. The first city is that in the east somewhere, the Near East, probably that area of Persia or modern-day Iran, kind of in that section, is where these three magi were. And they were three very wealthy, intelligent astrologers. They weren't really kings from the standpoint of we know kings. Now, maybe after they met the Christ child, they went back to their lands. Perhaps they were crowned in some other different way, and they had land and whatnot that we would think of as a king. But they were magi, they were astrologers, so they were very learned, and the royalty of the time would have looked upon them for advice, and in order to be able to give information on what was going on in the world, because they were very limited with what they had in that time period. And so in that one city where we don't even know the name of it, because we don't know where they came from, there's a lot of legends about the three. There's thoughts that were there more? What is it that what was their true background and what was their names? We kind of have some idea of it. But what we do know is that these three were seeking. In this one city, they were looking for something. What were they looking for? Their lives were pretty full. You know, they had money, they had probably a place to live in, very nice, they had a good life, but it wasn't enough. Because if it was enough, they never would have left. They were seeking, they were searching, and so they took gifts with them out of a matter of hospitality, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, to present here to this child. What led them out? It was the beauty of a star. It was a star up in the sky, and obviously they had an interest in the sky, and so they were in their city, in their comfortable life, but it wasn't enough. They needed something more. What I think one of the beautiful notes about the star is that at the birth of Christ, the star was shining bright in the sky and everything was light. But at the death of Christ on that Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, what happened? The whole world went dark. So really, Christ is that light, and his life represents the beauty of light. So these three are in this city, and it was the star, a sign of God's presence through creation that led them and came to them, and their lives were changed forever. Because when they followed the star, they didn't go back the same way. They went back enlightened. They went back probably being fulfilled, finding what they were looking for. For three men to go before a baby and lay prostrate, a sign of reverence and respect, their hearts were touched. So we hope and we know that they found what they were seeking. On their journey, they went to the second city. The second city was Jerusalem. We hear about it in the gospel today, that as they were looking for Bethlehem, or for where the star was, they stopped there in Jerusalem. Jerusalem was a hub, a place of academia, a place of wealth, a place of commerce. It was a very busy place. And it was there in Jerusalem, all of the people, the religious bigwigs of the day, that they were also looking for a Messiah. But guess what? In the midst of their hustle and bustle, they missed the star. What were they looking for? Did they miss the signs of God's presence? Were they too busy to be able to know, to ponder, to reflect, to treasure in their heart that they also needed something? So the tale in the second city, in the city of Jerusalem, is that people were just too much going about their daily lives that they were missing God. They were missing the presence of the Messiah, who was born just a few miles away. It wasn't that far from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. But they were just going about their business, and they were scared. When they saw these three from the east come dressed differently, carrying gifts, probably thinking, oh, they're powerful, Herod was scared. He wanted to buddy up with them to say, hey, tell me more about this. But guess what? They were able to go about their way because they knew God was important. Herod retreated into himself. He allowed his own ego to overtake him. And so as a result, he couldn't move further. He couldn't go any further. He got trapped. He was living in darkness. The kings, the three magi, they went field and fountain, moor and mountain is what they crossed. I had to look up what is a moor. It's an uphill tract of open parcel of land. And so they traveled thousands of miles. Herod wouldn't even go 5 miles to go and see the child. Why was he not open? Maybe that's where we're at. Perhaps we're in a place where we're too busy with life that we miss God. And maybe he's not that far away. The third city that we're taken to on our feast day today is that of Bethlehem, a place that was obscure, was not known, nothing good was to come from there, except for the fact that there was some predictions of a Messiah being born there. So there was interest in it, known as the city of bread, a few miles there from Jerusalem, from the hustle and the bustle of the big city. And there in Bethlehem, that's where the Messiah is born. There in Bethlehem, it's where peoples all come together, where there is unity in creation. It is where on that night that Christ was born that we realize that Christ came for all people. Christ didn't come just for the Jewish people. He came for everyone. So think of the person that you like the least and that you have issues with. Guess what? Christ came for them just as much as he came for you. And today, in a world where we have a lot of, seems like division, we've always had it, where there's a lot of conflict, I think people need to go to Bethlehem and find Christ. Not literally, but in their heart. I think we have some politicians that need to go to Bethlehem these days because I think they need to go and find the presence of Christ because Christ is a unifier. Christ allows us to bring all of our conflicts, all of our own ideas, our own selfish ways, and makes us and allows us to be able to pour out his grace. When we meet Christ, whether it be in the sacraments, whether it be through other people, whether it be through just our own relationship with him, when we have an encounter with Jesus Christ, in Bethlehem is where it happened first. Then we can be able to find harmony. We can find unity. We can find the gift of all that God wants to give to us because he pours out his grace there. So today, I ask you, which city are you in? Are you seeking? Are you somewhere in the east? Somewhere that you're looking for something more, that maybe in this year of 2019, God is going to send a sign to you. I ask you to be hopeful, to keep your eyes open, and to be like the Magi who left what they knew and they ended up going and they found what they were looking for. And they were so overtaken that conversion happened because manifestation happened. Maybe you are in Jerusalem. Maybe you are in a place where life is kind of just spinning around and you just don't really know where it's going. Stop for a moment and realize that God is not that far away. If you are so caught up in the hustle and bustle, we've had a couple of weeks of a little bit of a different, it was kind of a long Christmas. Kids are going back to school tomorrow, to the public school. Life gets back to normal. Now is the time to make a difference. To say, God, you are important. Otherwise, you sit in the palace like Herod and feed your own selfish and narcissistic desires. Rather, we can say, God's not that far away, and I need to go looking for him. Also, maybe you're in Bethlehem. Maybe you're in a place where you need some unity in your life. Is there someone with whom you are in conflict with? Bring it to Christ. Allow him to be the healer. Allow him to be the redeemer. Allow him to bring people together. He didn't just come to save me or to save you. He came to save all peoples. He came to save each one of us. To be able to say, to look into every human person that he created, just as we were made to be as numerous as the stars in the sky, as God had spoken to Abraham. In that same way, we are the stars of today. God needs us to shine in borrowed light. That is his light. It's not always our own, but we shine in the light that God gives to us. Where are we at? What city are we in? But more importantly, where would you like to go?